So what do you get when you pair the writer and director of awesome films like Hell or High Water, Sicario, and Wind River with a powerhouse actress like Angelina Jolie? Well, you get a movie that's nowhere nearly as good as those three films, but it's still quite enjoyable. A pleasant surprise, I'd say. Powerhouse actress? I'm not so sure about that. But she's really good in this movie. Those Who Wish Me Dead is directed by Taylor Sheridan, and if you liked any of his previous movies, you might not like this one. The easiest way to quickly describe it is to say that it's a very generic story that also happens to have some decently fleshed out characters, a quality that I attribute to Sheridan as the director and also as one of the movie's screenwriters. And don't be mistaken, when I say fleshed out characters, I really mean that the antagonists were allowed the time to bitch about their jobs. That's kind of interesting, but they are still very much villains for the sake of being villains. So I guess fleshed out characters probably wasn't the best way to describe that. Let's put it this way. Most of the characters in this movie have a certain substance to them that, while it is good, seems like it's more than characters in a movie like this should have. Angelina Jolie plays Hannah, a firefighter who has been posted to a watchtower as a result of her failing a psych evaluation. She went through a very traumatic experience on the job and spends quite a few scenes in this movie crying about it. Did that come across a little harsh? Don't worry, she's very good at expressing emotion. And it's all okay, because the story services her character. It sets everything up so that she can get the redemption she deserves. And as much as she is the focus of the movie, her side of the story really comes across as more of a subplot than anything. The main story is actually about this forensic accountant, I guess that's a thing, who stumbles across something really bad, and some people who would rather not have that information come out hire some pretty stone cold killers to take him out. So he goes on the run with his son, and through some very unfortunate events, his son ends up with Hannah, who must escort him out of the Montana wilderness. And that being the main story, in my opinion, is also where my biggest problem with this movie lies. It never gets resolved. We never get to find out what it was that he discovered. And normally that would be fine, but the emphasis that was put on it was a little heavy-handed in that case. There's an entire scene with Tyler Perry, who plays the boss of the assassins, I guess. And the whole point of that scene is just for him to stress how dire the situation is and how the assassins need to assume the absolute worst case scenario and they need to do their blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter because it never gets resolved. And I know the actual point of the movie is about Hannah and her needing a win in order to get her life back. So it doesn't matter in the end if the bad guy is still out there. Yeah, until he just hires more assassins. That aside, the movie really is quite enjoyable. The scenery is beautiful, and I've said this in previous review videos where I don't like to nitpick if it's on location or if it's a CGI generated scene, unless it's painstakingly obvious. In this case, I assume it was real, but if it was computer generated, it's incredible. The shots, when you see Hannah's watchtower, it's this wide shot that just shows the mountains in the background. They're beautiful. The action is really well done, and there are a lot of moments that just demand your attention, and those scenes look great the way they were shot. One scene in particular where Angelina Jolie fights one of the bad guys is really intense, and the way that it was shot, on point. It was shot with this raging fire as the backdrop, and the nature of the fight is just brutal and fast-paced. Wouldn't have been the worst thing if that fight scene had lasted just a little bit longer. The movie co-stars Jon Bernthal, Nicholas Hoult, and Aidan Gillen, and they're all fine in their respective roles. Aidan Gillen. I say that like I know who he is, and yes, I have seen him in other movies, but I had to look him up on IMDb to get his name. He plays one of the assassins, and he's definitely a standout, but I don't know if it's for the right reasons. He's terrifying and does good in the role, but he also kind of comes across as this oddly rugged metrosexual supermodel. I don't know. And I don't know who it was playing Jon Bernthal's wife. I'd look it up, but I'm filming on my phone. But she was one badass pregnant lady. As I mentioned, it's a pretty generic story, and it's not going to surprise you at any point, but it's got a certain quality to it that I attribute to the director. It reminded me a bit of Firestorm. I think that was a 1997-1998 Howie Long movie about a firefighter in the woods with fire raging and another side story going on about bad guys. I can't quite remember, but I had flashbacks to that movie just a bit. It also reminded me a little bit of, I think it's called Only the Brave with Josh Brolin and Jeff Bridges. That was an awesome movie. Heartbreaking if you haven't seen it, and I do recommend it. You'll then see the similarities that I saw, but Those That Wish Me Dead has nowhere near the amount of emphasis on actual firefighting as that movie did. I recommend it. It was enjoyable, and it was really nice to see a new movie. Thanks, Warner Brothers. So what about you? Have you had a chance to see Those That Wish Me Dead? If you did, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Those Who Wish Me Dead is director...